in the beginning of the year, you learn some of the basic procedures, suturing, Foley catheters, IVs, EKG, so on and so forth. And they have you just throw you in the ringer. And they're like, all right, go work a shift in the ER. And I was feeling quirky. So I was like, let me sign up for a weekend midnight shift.
Oh my gosh.
So I did like a 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. shift.
Yeah.
It was so much. I actually ended up staying like later until like 5:30 because there was just so much going on. Hi, my name is Anson. I'm in the 2024 cohort of the Knight-Hennessy Scholars program. I'm an MD MBA student at the School of Medicine and the Graduate School of Business. I imagine a world where all medical discoveries successfully translate into patient care.
Welcome to the Imagine a World podcast from Knight-Hennessy Scholars. We are here to give you a glimpse into the Knight-Hennessy Scholar community of graduate students spanning all 7 Stanford schools, including business, education, engineering, humanities, law, medicine, and sustainability. In each episode, we talk with scholars about the world they imagine and what they are doing to bring it to life. My name is Sydney, and today we'll be chatting with Anson, a second-year MD MBA student who envisions a world where all medical discoveries successfully translate into patient care. This is a very special episode because not only are we interviewing Anson, one of our Imagine a World co-hosts, our guest co-host is Kathy. Kathy is a 2021 Knight-Hennessy Scholar who mentored Anson in undergrad when he was a freshman and she was a senior on the same biomedical engineering design team at Johns Hopkins University. Stay tuned for the story on how Anson discovered his passions across science, medicine, and business, some rapid-fire questions from his best friend in medical school, and as always, his favorite improbable fact and advice for those applying to Knight-Hennessy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Imagine a World. My name is Sydney, and I am a third-year PhD candidate in electrical engineering and part of the 2023 Knight-Hennessy Scholars cohort. Today, I am really, really excited for this episode because, one, we get to interview my fellow friend and co-host Anson, but two, we have a super special guest co-host who you'll hear later in this episode why they are so special to Anson and why we are so excited to have them on this podcast. So without further ado, my other co-host, do you want to go ahead and please introduce yourself?
Yes. Thank you so much for having me, Sydney, and Anson too. I'm super, super excited to be here. My name is Kathy. I'm part of the 2022 Knight-Hennessy Scholars cohort, and I'm also an MD MBA student. Yeah. I've completed 3 years of my MD here already and just recently started the first year of my MBA.
Perfect. Okay, well, we're excited to have you, Kathy, here bright and early this morning. This will go on record, the earliest podcast I think we'll probably ever do. We left our building at 6 a.m. and it's absolutely worth it. And life of trying to interview a medical student, right? Two medical students, exactly. Both in scrubs right now. Exactly. So
Yes.
They're super official. All right, Anson, welcome to the pod. How does it feel to be on the other side?
It's a little weird to be on the other side, but I'm psyched for it. So I'm excited.
You're going to do great. I can't wait. Okay, so first step, before we talk about your Imagine a World statement, can you explain to the audience how you know Kathy and why it's so special that she gets to be your co-host here today?
Yeah. Well, I think it's pretty obvious just from our intros that we have a lot in similar, or a lot that's similar. But even more than that, she actually knew me when I was a freshman
Oh my God.
in college. Very small freshman, like... How many years ago? Was this like 6, 7 years ago?
Wow.
Oh, geez. But
Yeah. 6 years ago.
I was a freshman. She was a senior. And we actually studied the same major in college.
Wow.
And at Hopkins, they have a really cool design team program that they allow freshmen to participate in. And Kathy, serendipitously, was my team lead.
Aww.
And she recruited me onto her team. And I will give her credit that experience really set me on the path I'm in right now and allowed me to uncover a lot of the interests I didn't know that I had. So it's really nice and full circle that more than half a decade later, we can have her come on as a co-host to sort of like tell that story. So I think this is going to be so fun.
Yeah, I remember I was the leader of this design team, and it was kind of like my senior year. It was kind of my capstone experience in a sense. And I was like really excited, but also like nervous about how like my team would come together. And we like handpicked Anson
Wow.
from the crowd of like excited freshmen. And I remember like being really like impressed by how like excited he was and just like kind of the energy and the personality that he brought to the team. And it has been like so heartwarming and meaningful to me to like see his like growth all this time from, you know, someone who's like excited about everything and then ultimately figuring out where his passions were. And now we're like literally here 6 years later, other side of the country, but like also together.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to seeing him like grow as an MD student here. And also like when he gets to the MBA, he's going to tell me about that too. So it's a good time.
I can't wait. That's so beautiful. And I think it's also very special because Anson was a freshman when COVID hit too. And so to be able to have that like long-lasting friendship, not just between you two, but I heard your group chat is still active between your design team.
Yes, PDF feed. A little shout out.
Heck yes, PDF feed. Check us out.
That's awesome. Yeah, very, very impressive. Okay, so now we know we have two MD MBA students and both here now in KH and also at Stanford, 3 years apart, and seems like there's a lot of similarities. But as cool as that is, today is about Anson, our star, our shining light. Before we talk about the world you imagine, let's talk about the world you were born into and have experienced thus far. Where are you from and what was your journey here?
Yeah, I'm originally from New York.
Yes.
And I love to talk about this because I put on my Instagram bio, like New York, California, and I feel like those are the two best states in the country. And I feel like
New Yorker,
it's such a flex, exactly, to like tell people, yeah, I live in California now, but I'm from New York. Like it feels so good to say it. But that's where I was born, and then lived there for a couple of years, and actually moved to China when I was around 4 or 5.
Okay.
This was like right before the recession. And I think a lot of companies are trying to grow in China. And then obviously my dad spoke Chinese, so they had him go over there to help with some of the expansion in China. So I actually ended up for a little over 2 years at an international school there. And that ended up being a super interesting experience. And my family's Cantonese, so I actually knew zero Mandarin when I moved to, I lived in Suzhou, China, which is a little bit south of Shanghai. And it was just really interesting meeting people from all over the world. It was like low-key super bougie, which I was not used to coming from. It's like regular old suburban Long Island. And then eventually we left to come back because our entire family is in New York, having immigrated there like a couple of decades prior. And then just spent the next like 13 years, 12 years growing up on Long Island in the burbs. And then ended up going to Hopkins for undergrad, studied biomedical engineering, where I met Kathy.
Yeah.
I think one thing to point out is actually I'm a twin with a twin brother named Justin.
Who's older? Who's older?
He's older by 4 minutes,
By
if
4
that
minutes.
counts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It doesn't count.
I don't know if it counts, but yeah, it was very funny. Like we were always like not super similar, but I mean, when you're twins growing up, it's just like you get compared. He was a valedictorian. I was not. It was just this whole thing. But anyway, we ended up both going to Hopkins together.
Wow.
Both studied biomedical engineering. But we actually ended up like making our own friends. And honestly, there were days, even when we lived together, that I wouldn't see him for like 3 days at a time.
Wow.
And I think that was a good thing because I don't know if you know, in elementary schools and middle schools, they deliberately try to separate twins to encourage social growth because I think there's a tendency for them to be attached.
Yeah.
I think going to college, I had a little bit of that fear, but I ended up working out. And even though we were in a lot of the classes together, we sort of went our own paths. I say that knowing what I'm going to say next, which is after graduating, we both moved to DC to become consultants.
Oh my God.
So
did you talk about that or did that just happen?
it just happened. Like, honestly, he was interested in going to business first a lot earlier than me. It was something I discovered a little bit later, in part talking to Kathy and hearing about her route.
It was really interesting because I remember when you guys both came to Hopkins and it was kind of, you know, like the senior design team leaders, like looking at the freshmen and all that and seeing like who'd we pick. Like I remember seeing you both and you guys actually had distinct personalities and distinct like, I think like interests and talents at that time. And I think Justin ended up being on my best friend's design team. So you actually got to know him pretty well too. It's
a small world.
That was very
a
funny.
really small world.
Yeah. Oh, actually, I think it was they had like these awards at the end of freshman year for like best freshman, like XYZ. I think like, what are you like project manager or something? And then me and him ended up winning that.
Really?
So fun.
They're like the dynamic duo, but you know, like I feel like we're together, but also like apart.
Yeah.
So I think, you saw that in college that you guys kind of developed really pretty like distinct paths, but like you said, coalesced maybe a little bit after college.
Yeah.
But it was nice. I think it's good to have a support system, especially how tough, like I had a really tough time in college, I think, especially in the beginning. And then the transition out of college is also hard.
Yeah.
So it was nice for the first year for us to both be we're in the DC area, living in Arlington, to have that.
Yeah.
So actually for the first time when I started med school, it's like the first time we were not in the same area in the 23 years of life.
Is he still in DC right now?
He's still in DC right now. Maybe he'll move out to California. He's been talking about it. So we'll see what the future has in store. But that'd be pretty funny.
Yeah. Do you miss him?
No, I'm kidding. A little bit. But we do like text fairly frequently. Yeah. We do keep each other updated. So it's good. It's good.
So Anson, I wanted to like learn a little bit more about, you said you studied biomedical engineering when you went into college, but at that point you had some like undifferentiated interest that sort of like got a little bit more clear as you went throughout college. Could you say maybe a little bit more about like what sparked this like initial interest in like biomedical engineering? Like why that at first? And then how did it like sort of change throughout undergrad?
Yeah. I think when I was applying to colleges in high school, in the back of my head, I'm like, I'm never doing engineering. I'm never doing it. Because I honestly struggled a lot with math. I think I was a pretty good student in high school. And everything came pretty easy to me except for math. Like, I was bad at math, in part because I think I would always miss a lot of the little details, which probably doesn't sound very good for an aspiring clinician.
Hey, this is high school version of Anson, okay? Okay.
But that was sort of an issue I always ran into. My dad studied engineering when he was in undergrad, and then actually like transitioned later in his career into more like sales and business development. So he always had this idea. He's like, oh yeah, you guys should be engineers. You should, and then do business afterwards. And I was like, nah, I don't want to do. No one wants to really do what their parents do, I think, in a lot of cases. So I sort of was turned off by that idea. But obviously, I think like for people who want to do biomedical engineering, like Hopkins is really known for their program. And I was like an aspiring pre-med, so obviously I was going to apply to Hopkins. And I was like, why the heck not? Let me apply to BME, because I think for pragmatic reasons, you can get in as a freshman. And then if you don't want to do it anymore, you can leave and transfer to another program. But once you get admitted, you can't transfer into BME. That's sort of one of the quirks about the program. So I think I just decided, like I did some like BME related research when I was in high school, kind of liked it. I was like, why not? Let's do it. And ended up getting admitted. And I think it's hard to say no once you're in it. There's sort of this like golden handcuffs moment because they treat you pretty well. There's a lot of really cool opportunities that you have access to. So that's how I got locked into engineering, even though initially I was like, I would never do it. But what happened was I ended up joining a lab pretty early. In high school, I mentioned I was doing some like bioengineering related research, more on the materials science side. Really liked it. So I ended up joining this lab, the Hai-Chun Mao lab in the materials science and biomedical engineering departments that did a lot of really cool stuff, sort of across the gambit. It's like tissue regeneration, drug delivery, all of that. And started pretty early as a freshman because I knew what I wanted to do. But that, I think, was where I initially started developing an interest on like the business and translation side of things. And that really got catalyzed when I started design team starting around the spring semester at Hopkins. Just to give a little bit of background, like the lab that I worked in, very translationally oriented. I would think a lot of the research was almost like productized, like engineering focused. So a lot of the things that we thought about, I felt like weren't common in some of my previous research experiences. So like, what would the target product profile look like? How do we think about usability, like storage? All those different considerations for something to actually become a utilized product. And on top of that, we had a lot of like industry collaborations with startups and larger companies that would, have their teams collaborate with us, like give us funding. And of course, those considerations became even more emphasized in those types of partnerships. And on top of that, like there's a couple startups that spun out of the lab as well. I think some of them are actually in human clinical trials now, which is super exciting.
It's impressive,
So simultaneous to that, when I started design team, a huge part is like doing business plan competitions and getting funding so that you could continue on your work. And like Kathy and some of the other older members on the team who had some experience in that, like really mentored me and helped me learn about like, what is a CAGR? Like, how do you calculate a market size? And I was immediately super drawn to that. And even like pitching, like teaching me how to pitch compellingly was, I think, an extremely big skill that I was able to carry through all of undergrad.
Why do you think you were so interested in particularly like the business side of these things? I feel like a lot of times when we talk to scientists or engineers, they're really excited about the like developing the product or kind of like translating like an idea to a prototype. But I think you have a lot of like really interesting and unique experience, kind of like translational side. Like, how do you get a product to like actually market, or how do you like make the entire world know about it? So can you tell us a little about that?
Yeah. I think initially when I foraying into these areas, it was much more like a gut feeling. Like I was just like, this is interesting. Let me do it. But I think in retrospect, having gone through like a couple different experiences that intersect those two areas, it made me realize how big of an issue it is. When you talk I actually had this argument a lot with some of my lab members when we're working on research projects. They would like only focus on the technical aspect. And I'm like, that's probably fine to like optimize for that if you're doing like discovery or something like that. But if you're trying to build a product for someone to use someday, you have to start thinking about that from the very beginning, because it's very hard to like achieve this profile and then backtrack and start like pulling things away. That's actually very unoptimized, right? Where you start removing, you have to build from the bottom up with those considerations in hand. And I think that kind of idea became even more prominent when I started doing like internships. So I interned at the same healthcare consulting company that Kathy interned at like a couple years ago. So we actually like I know, just like following her footsteps.
That's so cute.
And there's actually like a fairly big like alumni pool in KH from that very, very small firm. Like there's another person in my year, Isha, who is also interned the same year as I did. The Health Advances, like a super awesome experience. I think like really the first time I rigorously was pursuing those two things simultaneously. I remember working on a project, I'll keep it vague, but it just became extremely obvious that even though they'd passed through all the regulatory hurdles, their team had no clinicians and no scientists on it. Their go-to-market team. And it was clear that there was this almost siloing between the teams that are trying to bring this to patients. And because of that, their entire adoption got delayed by years, and they lost millions and millions of dollars. They had to think about like how they're going to sell their product to another buyer because they were running out of cash to use. So it just became a whole mess. And I actually like knew patients personally who would have benefited from a therapeutic like that. But because of the fact that it took so many years for it to come out, even though it had passed all the technical hurdles, they weren't able to use it, unfortunately. And I think that type of thing I saw time and time again, where it almost was an afterthought. Translation was an afterthought. But it needs to be something that's in the beginning. And that's a really hard problem, right? Because if you're a scientist, you want to focus on the science. If you're a business person, you're not really going to be brought in until the business part is like directly relevant, and you have something that's like past these early preclinical stages of development. But I think what I realize is like, how do we change the paradigm where we have people who have a fluency across those different disciplines be involved from the very early stages, so you don't make those mistakes, or you at least reduce the frequency of those mistakes from the onset. And I think with that type of interdisciplinary thinking, can really increase the success rate of translation. We see this number thrown around all the time that like the vast majority of therapeutics fail. And part of it is technical, right? It doesn't pass through like preclinical assays. Maybe it doesn't pass through clinical trials, but a huge part is adoption as well. And a big thing that comes to mind is like all this hype about Alzheimer's drugs that were in the last couple of years. And like analysts were throwing these crazy projections of like these blockbuster drugs. But for a lot of different reasons, it just like flopped. It doesn't work. So I think those are examples where we want those drugs and those therapeutics to succeed. But if you don't think about it in the right way from early onset, you have these situations where you have high expectations that are eventually not met.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it sounds like you have some really formative experiences through mentorship, or just like actually seeing this in real life, right? Of things not being able to reach their full potential. And it makes sense, right, why this is your Imagine a World statement.
Totally.
But my next question is like, how does the clinical side fit in? Like, why MD plus MBA?
Yeah. In my head, and I sort of wrote about this in my KH essay actually, is I think the three pillars of like medical and healthcare innovation is like the science and engineering aspect, the business translation, and the clinical aspect.
Okay. Yeah.
And the clinical aspect is that key differentiator, I think, between all other industries. I think like if you think like tech or like any of other startups or innovation, I think science and business are like really the two key pillars. And then like the users are going to be like any spread of the gambit, right? Like the typical consumer or like an enterprise use. But I think because of the complexity of healthcare, like the clinician perspective is so important. And I think like the psychology of whether a clinician is going to use something is dependent on so many factors that it's just impossible for simply like interviewing a couple of doctors to get the full picture. There's considerations from like the reimbursement side, because a lot of times doctors have to substantiate why they're doing a test, why they're prescribing something, or else they're not going to get reimbursed and the patient's going to have to pay for it, right? We also think about like how competitive the industry is in terms of like there's so many drugs out there. There's so many potential contraindications. Every single patient is different. How do they go through that thinking process to determine which option they're going to use, given like all these different options available? And then obviously region to region, clinicians have completely different training, and that also dictates how they think about it. So other experiences I've seen is like, even if you create a great product, passes all the safety checks, passes clinical trials, FDA says yes, you still have to pass a hurdle of like getting to the doctors, getting to the payers, and having them actually use them on their patients. Because the patients are the ones who are getting the treatment, but they're not the users. They're not the ones making the determination as to whether or not they use this given product. And I think that's why you really need to have that clinical perspective to have that nuance. And you can imbue that into the early translation process. I think it's something that's changing a lot more now. Like I'm on LinkedIn very frequently, and I see a lot of these like clinician scholar roles or like even like clinician AI roles where they're onboarding clinicians to become part of like companies from early on. And I think in part to get their perspective so that can be embedded in the way they design their product or think about marketing their drug. Because even as like, it doesn't sound great to think about like, oh, there's all these other factors that are in consideration for developing things that are going to ultimately help patients, right? Yeah. But that's just a reality of it. And if we're naive to that fact, you just end up having nothing at all. And I think that's why through my struggles with deciding whether or not to pursue this very, very long path, I ultimately decided to go for it. And I think it's the best decision I've made because honestly, and this is to all the people who are considering medicine out there, a lot of people are going to tell you not to do it. A lot of people are going to say it's too long, it's too hard. Yeah. If you could see yourself doing anything else, go do that. But
why did you do it if you got that advice?
Because I think I realized you don't have to just pick one thing.
Yeah.
If you really care about multiple things, you can find a way for them to all meld together. And I think like Kathy is an inspiration to me because I think she like showed me that was possible, right? Like there was like obviously a lot of trepidation during my gap year, for example, when I went to work at Bain as a consultant. And I was like, oh shoot, like imagine when they look at my resume or my application, they're like, oh, this dude went in, like became a consultant in DC. I didn't know healthcare, by the way, for the duration of the time I was there. And like, this doesn't make sense. It's not compelling enough. Clearly very, stratified interests. Yeah. And that's what I heard from a lot of my mentors more on the business side as well. If you got a knack for business, like you should just go for it. There's like, the ceiling is endless. You can jump into it right away. But I think two things, like one is what I said before. I just asked, like, I can do whatever I want to do.
Yeah, it's true.
And if I care enough about it, then I think I can find a way for it to come together. And I think honestly, the experiences I had actually made me very convinced that there was a way for it to come together, even though it's not a super common thing to do.
Yeah. I think what you're saying about this idea of like integrating like all these different interests, I think is really inspiring. And like to everyone out there, like you said, like, it's possible. And I think specifically here at Stanford and at Knight-Hennessy, like we have a really special community where I feel like everyone on campus is
everywhere.
doing something
Yeah.
like interdisciplinary,
Absolutely.
like with like different like people who are like subject matter experts, different departments. And it's a really special place for people to kind of develop their varied interests and also find ways to like combine them and collaborate with other people. So like I'm interested to hear like Anson, so now that you're here at Stanford, like how has like the community here like helped you foster your like interdisciplinary interests, and how have your interests kind of like changed during your time here too?
I think that precise reason is probably a big reason why most of us chose to come to Stanford is like beyond all the like the incredible things that Stanford offers is just this, and KH specifically is this ethos of the multidisciplinary. I remember coming for immersion weekend and meeting all these different scholars who, like Kathy alluded to, like really are dipping both feet into very different lakes. And they do it in such a compelling way that it was so inspiring. I remember coming back to work like the following like Monday or Tuesday after immersion weekend. I was like, oh, that was like actually one of the best weekends I've had in a really long time.
That's
just because
so good.
I think like one, it's so inspiring to see people combine these things that I never knew was possible. And two, actually I was like sitting on a panel the other day for some of the admissions reviewers. And I said this very same thing, but just like the quality of the questions and engagement that I got from people was something I'd never had before. I think it's very easy to like yap at your friends and they're like, oh, cool. But there's like no follow-up. I think that's fine. But I remember when I was telling people what I was interested in and vice versa, just like the level and depth of the questions that they were able to ask, even though they had nothing to do with my field, was just incredible. And I think it pushed me to think harder from perspectives I never had before. So I think in like a non-tangible way, that's like one of the things I've noticed. In terms of like the work that I do now, like obviously like AI in healthcare is a huge thing.
Yeah.
And I think through my experiences, I became really interested in sort of like this hyper growth. So we think about like startups, like you really jump in a matter of months to like exploding. And that phenomenon is so exciting to me. And I think that's an area I'm starting to focus more on now. I'm working in a couple labs that look at language models and also computer vision for healthcare applications. And how do we develop tools in a fair and unbiased way? And also think about deployment, because from my Imagine a World statement, I think the ability to translate is a key thing. And in the context of healthcare AI, I think like deployment is sort of that key factor. And what's really exciting there compared to, say, pharmaceuticals and like devices is that you get a couple chances, right? And you can iterate. You can like deploy something really quickly, beta test it, get feedback, and then fix it and then do it again.
Yeah.
Obviously, you don't want to do it too many times because you're going to start, angering some people. But that became really exciting to me that you can run little experiments on systems or on people in order to see what they like and what works, and then change your product from there. And I think that's also like sort of this nexus of all this interdisciplinary thinking from the business, from the engineering, from the clinical side. And I've seen that more than ever before here at Stanford, like even amongst faculty, amongst other students. And I think through that, I've been able to do some really cool work. Like I spent the last summer at Microsoft working on research strategy for them, thinking about like medical AI moonshots, like thinking about things from like a venture capital perspective, and then even working with some of the AI institutes here, thinking about like how can we do more to think about healthcare.
Yeah. Wow. You got your hands full. Anson, very, very busy student, but I hear the passion in your voice. And I think it's very, like, just as you talking about like Kathy being an inspiration, I feel like there are plenty of people, myself included, who like, definitely like look up to you and have a lot of awe for the way that you're able to, one, find time for all of it, but two, I think approach things with such a genuine curiosity and like resilience and just don't want to take no for an answer, right? Like, I think similar to what you were saying within Knight-Hennessy, you find these people who combine what may initially sound like that's a weird combination. Like why does that make sense? And then after, just 2 minutes of a conversation, you're convinced that, actually we definitely gotta get more on this. And so that's really exciting. But it sounds like you're doing a lot as far as, all this interdisciplinary between the MD and the MBA, but as part of the MD and MBA program, you start out right with the first few years of medical school. How has the MD been so far? Like, do you have any experiences with patient interaction or translating to these like discoveries to patient care? / what's it like being a medical student in general? anything you
Yeah.
expected, unexpected?
good
Tell
questions.
us a day in the life.
Day in the
Day in the life.
Oh,
Yes, that's what I
we
want to
might have
know.
a little video
That's what I
coming out
wanna
about
know.
that. Who knows?
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. I think to context that a little bit, I was honestly really scared of coming to medical school, in part because of what everyone was saying to me. But the other is that, and I think a lot of pre-meds might be able to relate to this, and I feel a little bad saying it, but honestly, my clinical experiences, like volunteering and whatnot in undergrad, were like bad. I did not enjoy it at all.
Okay.
And I think in retrospect, I understood why. It's more this feeling of helplessness, because like there's really not much you can do as an undergrad, and they kind of just have you stand around and like fold blankets or I don't know, whatever, depending on the hospital you're in. And I just like really did not like it. There were these flashes of times when I would like talk with a patient that I was like, okay, I do really enjoy this. But those were very far and few between, because generally you don't interact that much with patients anyway. So I was scared. And one of the mindsets I use to make decisions is 5 to 10 years from now, am I going to regret not having done it? That's sort of my North Star that I use. I think it's worked out for me pretty well so far, because I think I fear regret more than anything else. So you just think about like, even if it's really, really hard, it's going to be really, really tough. Am I going to regret not having done it? And if the answer is probably yes, and I was like, okay, let's just do it. So I came to medical school, and I was scared that I'd be like, oh my God, what did I just sign myself up for? Maybe I don't like it. But I feel very lucky to say that like within the first like week or two, like the first, like even our fake like simulated patient experiences, like I fell in love with it. And I really, really liked the clinical aspect. It was completely different than what I'd experienced in undergrad. I was telling you all about this before we hopped on recording, but like I did my first ED shift over the weekend.
Tell us about that.
And it was like so fun. Yeah, like overnight.
First, what is ED? What is
ED, emergency department.
Yes.
So this is a part of the second year curriculum in the beginning of the year. You learn some of the basic procedures, suturing, Foley catheters, IVs, EKGs, so on and so forth. And they have you just throw you in the ringer. And they're like, all right, go work a shift in the ER. And I was feeling quirky. So I was like, let me sign up for a weekend midnight shift.
Oh my gosh.
So I did like a 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. shift.
Yeah.
It was so much. I actually ended up staying like later until like 5:30 because there was just so much going on. I was able to see like 2 traumas, or like Palo Alto traumas, I guess. Like
Someone fell off their horse.
someone fell off the bike or like something like that. Did like a Foley catheter, a couple IVs, EKGs, like an arthrocentesis, splint.
I got to do
like
probably
laceration,
like one EKG my first emergency department
Wow.
shift.
Yeah, there was a
so
lot going
Anson's
on.
already going.
It was. I still have a lot to learn, but it was like really fun. I think really enlightening. And I've sort of felt that throughout the entirety of medical school. And I feel very, very lucky to say that I don't think for a second I regretted like choosing to pursue medicine.
Nice.
And I think there was like a little bit in the back of my head before, especially with all these other interests I've had. It's like, after medical school, do I want to pursue a clinical career?
Yeah.
Because like, honestly, like at Stanford, that's like a question that's asked, because there's so many opportunities out there. I think particularly today, there's value for like having pursued medical school to do something else. I think this has sort of reinvigorated my passion for medicine. I really want clinical practice to be a significant part of my career. And this goes back to like, honestly, I can do whatever I want to do. Like I used to be scared, like, oh, I'm going to be so old when I, finally become a doctor. But like, I just say like, oh, I'd rather be 30 and a doctor and 30 and not a doctor. So it doesn't really matter. Time's going to pass. And it's not like the world stops when you're in training. In fact, I love medical school and I have so much time to pursue other things in addition to medicine. And I just really want to use it as an opportunity to set myself up to continue pursuing everything I want to do.
I think it's really cool and inspiring how, like you said, you're literally a med student, right? You're in your second year, and even beyond that, and you've had a lot of clinical experiences already, and these experiences that have shown you, again, your passion for medicine. But then even apart from that, you've been able to do these like cool summer internships. You've been able to do research as well in like healthcare and AI and all that on tying some of your other interests and like business and translational medicine into clinical medicine. And I know, you still have the MBA ahead of you. So tell us a little bit more about like how that fits in. Like, what are you excited about? I just started like my first I'm like in my second week of the MBA right now, and it's like very, very different. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on what you're kind of like expecting out of the MBA experience when you start in a few years.
Yeah. I think, well, one, I'm very excited for it. I think it'll be a huge change in pace. I don't know if I'm ready for it, but like...
You'll be ready. I have confidence in you.
I think it'll be really fun. So I guess to give people a little bit of context, the structure, this is a question I think me and Kathy both get asked a lot when people hear that we're doing a dual degree, because the schedule's a little funky. Usually what happens is you'll do your first 2 years of pre-clin. That's how it is at Stanford. So there's like lecture-based and like small group-based, and you build the fundamentals of medicine. And then in your third year, you start jumping into clerkships, which is clinical rotations. You'll start like going through the wards, and you'll do rotation like emergency medicine, internal medicine, so on and so forth, and really hone in on those. Usually for the regular MD path, after that, you'll either do like a research year, which sometimes people do, or you'll continue finish in the 4 years, and you'll do your electives, sub-internships, and then apply to residency. If you do the MBA, your fourth year is what they call a step-out year. And you end up stepping out of the MD and then doing a full year of MBA. And after you do that full year, your fifth year is sort of a mix. I think you do a little of the MBA, finish up your electives and your sub-Is, and then you graduate actually with your MBA cohort. And then usually with most of your MD cohort too, because for those of you who don't know, like Stanford tends to really lengthen the MD degree.
Definitely.
Like something like, I want to say like 3/4 maybe of students end up taking more than 4 years to graduate.
Yeah.
A lot of that's like MD, PhD, dual degrees, research years, which I think is a good thing. And I really love the flexibility there. But I think one of the big things I'm looking forward to is like taking all the experiences I've garnered in the first 3 years of medical school and starting to apply that through like an innovation and like startups lens. I think from the innovation side, that's something I'm trying to do already. I think like one example that comes to mind is at Stanford, we have something called the Cardinal Free Clinics. And it serves like a dual purpose. Like one, it helps to serve some of the uninsured population in the Bay Area. So we have a clinic in San Jose, and we also have one in the Redwood City area. I actually help to co-run the neurology clinic. So some of our patients that come in with neurological symptoms can be referred to the clinic. And then we're usually paired with like a resident and an attending in neurology to help, provide some immediate care and then also do some referrals if necessary and some prescriptions. And some of the work I'm doing from research is actually on computer vision for early diagnosis of various dementias. We're thinking about like how can we use at-home tools, using motor-based assessments for this really early indicators. Because oftentimes if you're coming in for cognitive tests, you already have signs of cognitive decline. And right now there are some drugs that are out there, and I think I mentioned this before, but they really only work if you intervene very early. So I think early intervention is more important than ever. And one of the big focuses is like, how can we make sure that this tool is accessible for everybody, right?
Yeah.
I think one of the really cool things about the free clinic is like one, obviously as a young medical student, being able to work directly with these patients who are underserved, uninsured, but like how directly it ties to the work I'm doing in AI tooling, right? Because I mentioned before, one of them is like how to create fair systems that can really serve people.
Yeah.
And for early detection, a lot of this is going to be used at home by patients of all different backgrounds. And I think honestly, like interacting with them, like I'm not talking to them about my research. I'm just doing, like neuro exam and like talking to them about how they can, work on whatever ailments that they have. But just interacting with them gives me so much perspective on like, how do we design these tools to be as usable as possible? Like, I feel like I have this whole new perspective of like, when we're doing like design these user studies, I'm like, yeah, that's not going to work. Yeah. I think just from like just a couple experiences with these patients, like, oh, it's never going to work because of X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And I think this really feeds back to why, even if I wanted to be just an innovator and not do clinical medicine, having that clinical experience is so valuable because that nuance is just impossible to get otherwise. But there's just like this intuition that I know clinicians build over decades of clinical practice that they can just imbue into like designing things. And obviously there's merit to talking to patients as well. And I'm not saying that that's not important. But I think like having both and being that person that has both is so critical. And I'm really happy that I've been able to see that so early on. And I'm excited that, like, especially having after done rotations in my third year, I can take those experiences into my MBA year and think about, like, what are the really big problems I'm interested in and how can we solve that through, like, business and innovation and, like, maybe building something.
Yeah.
But that's sort of in the works as I'm focusing on passing medical school and making sure I'm not, sacrificing that aspect of my education as well, because I really want to be good at both.
Yeah, well, Anson, you are inspiration. I would say, like, me as your once mentor. I'm like, Anson, please mentor me now. I think it's really, really cool how you've been able to, like, combine all these different interests of yours and really do everything to, like, such an impressive, like, degree. It seems like, I think in the future, you are going to really make a big impact on this space. And, you're going to be, like, one of the pioneers to help translate these innovations to the bedside. I think, as, like, a future clinician innovator. One thing, like, I'm just curious about, like, can you tell me about Anson, like, 10, 15 years from now? Like, how do you envision using, like, your MD, MBA in the future? Like, what is your ideal practice scenario? And is there a specific specialty you're interested in? Like, tell us a little bit about future Anson.
Yeah. I think specialty-wise is a hard problem, and you'll see a lot of med students stressing about that first year, second year, third year, fourth year.
Honestly, still.
Exactly. I think I've sort of tried to approach it in a pretty pragmatic way because there's pros and cons to everything, right? Like, if I pursue something like really rigorous, that could be really exciting. Like, for example, like plastics research, I worked on that for several years in undergrad. Like, my lab, a lot of it was reconstructive surgery for peripheral nerves. And that was something that was sort of on my radar. I also really like emergency medicine. I think, like, that was reinvigorated as well, like, during my shift. But at the same time, as I mentioned, like, I want to do research. I want to do business. I want to do, like, maybe startups. And I don't want to be someone who's, like, mediocre at both because I'm, like, sacrificing so much of my time. So there's like a bit of give and take. I think I've come to know about myself that I want to do something procedural. Like, I really like working with my hands, and that keeps me really excited. And tangibility of it is so much fun in medicine. So I think, like, maybe like a general surgery or emergency medicine is something I'm thinking about right now. I've always thought of myself as more of, like, a generalist anyway. Like, I'm excited by so many different things. And I think both those specialties give me the breadth that I'm excited for. And then from a more pragmatic lens, and maybe this will help, like, some of the other medical students that are out there thinking about this process and are interested in other things. I think I just realized, like, if I want to do, like, plastic surgery or, like, neurosurgery or orthopedics, those are, I think, one, very, very competitive.
Yeah.
And two, I think because they're very, very competitive, you sort of have to put, like, 90% of everything you do towards that specialty, or at least that's sort of the sense that I'm getting.
Yeah.
And I don't think I was interested in any of those enough that I'm like, all my research is going to be focused on that. All my volunteering is going to be focused on that. Because I think, unfortunately, there's sort of a difference in what I'm interested in from the research side and what I'm interested in clinically.
Yeah.
And that doesn't work super well, I think, if you're trying to go for a really competitive specialty. And it worked out for me that I think, like, as a generalist, there are generalist specialties out there, at least on the onset. And I think they could be a really good fit for me as I pursue it. So I think 10, 15 years from now, I don't know the exact split, but I want clinical practice to be fairly significant.
Yeah.
I think I want to work in academic medicine for a couple reasons. I think one, I think very truly from my heart, especially now that academia is like the nexus of innovation for our country, for this world. And, like, investing in that, like, both in our career and with funding is so, so important. And I want to be able to sit there because, one, all the exciting things are happening, but also two, I think that's where translation is the biggest thing.
Yeah.
And you can think about, like, all the incentives there, right? Like, why would a professor give up their tenure that they've worked decades for to go do a startup that might fail?
Exactly, yeah.
How can we build systems and infrastructure that maybe they don't have to sacrifice that? Maybe there are other people who can step in and work closely with them to bring their discoveries to reality. Because when I was at Hopkins, I worked at the tech transfer office for a while, and a lot of it was focused on these types of problems. And what we found is the vast majority of these really cool breakthroughs and innovations just sit at they publish a paper, maybe they'll do a patent,
Yeah.
and then that's kind of it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of work to take that next step. So how can we make that better? And I think that's one reason I want to be in academia. I think the second is just how much flexibility there really is, because I want to do some clinical medicine, because I want to do some research, because I want to work with industry, and maybe I want to be involved in startups.
Yeah.
I don't think there's really any other role that exists out there beyond in academic medicine that you can do that.
Yeah.
And there are faculty members here at Stanford and even like physicians I met at Microsoft who do all those different things simultaneously. And it's so incredible and it's so inspiring. And I know it's also a really, really tough path, but I think that's something hopefully I'm aiming towards. Yeah.
I like this goal. I'm very supportive. And I think similar to what Kathy said, I have no doubt in my mind that you'll excel at whatever route that you do, whatever path you take.
We will see Dr. Zhao's name.
Yes.
In shining lights in the future. And I'll be like, I knew him.
Remember us when you're famous. Okay, well, Anson, I've loved hearing your story like thus far. Very inspiring, as we've said 100 times in this episode. But as much as I would love to keep talking forever, we do have to like think about starting to close up this episode, not only time-wise, but also you have to get to class, and so does Kathy as well. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do for the listeners is we're going to start off with a rapid-fire question section. And then we'll do our typical closing of like improbable facts as well as advice for future applicants. I'm going to preface these questions that they all came from Anson's bestie, Jackson Powell. Shout out. Do you want to say, who is Jackson to you? And who is he? Like, what is he? Like, just some random person.
He's a very, very good friend that I met in medical school. And yeah, we just met each other like very beginning, pre-orientation. I think like hit it off right away. And we've just been very, very close since then. He knows an extraordinary amount about me, so I'm a little scared for what these questions might be, because there's a pretty wide spectrum that they can come from.
He gave us 10. There's a lot, and I don't know that we'll go through all of them, but I guess the first one, which was the first question that he sent us, so I'll do it in the order. It says, quote, I know your Knight-Hennessy video interview was teaching a quick recipe. For context, like when you apply to KH, you do the written application, and then the second round, you send a video interview where you like have to teach something for 2 minutes, and then you go into immersion weekend for finals weekend. So that's the context. But for the question, so I know your KH video interview was teaching a quick recipe. You also recently hosted a whole 4-course dinner party for friends. So can you give us your favorite 1, quick meal to whip up, and 2, favorite super elaborate fancy meal to cook?
Quick shout out to my co-chef, Hannah Lee, who is in my med school class as well. We put on like an end of summer dinner party for our friends. And maybe I could send you some pictures. Maybe that could be included.
Yeah, please do.
Can you cook for me?
I can.
Yeah.
It was so much fun, but I think it took us like maybe 15 hours of prep total. It was a lot of work because we wanted to make it like each individual, like a multi-course thing. I guess I'll also give context is that Jackson and I eat a lot of meals together, and we Uber Eats a lot. So we actually don't end up cooking a lot. So this is a pretty funny question. But I think the first quick one, and I'm going to get clowned for this so hard, but this is what I actually made in my cage video. Yeah. And I still do this, is like microwaved steamed eggs.
Whoa, okay.
And basically what I do is I'll like cut up some Napa cabbage, some mushrooms, put a little bit of water, stick that in the microwave, cook it down.
Yeah.
And then scramble 2 eggs, pour it in, add a little bit of water, and then a little bit of chicken bouillon or something.
Yeah.
And then I'll microwave that again until it sets, and I eat it with rice. That's the video I did. It tastes really good.
Nice.
I microwave a lot of things, and I get clowned for it, but it's very efficient.
Busy, efficient, protein.
Yeah. And I think very quickly, the more elaborate one, I'll just talk about the dessert that we made. I really, really like mango sago. Jackson really likes it too. But we ended up making like a mango sago inspired dessert. So like blended frozen mango with coconut milk, and we whipped in some of the sago, which are tapioca pearls. And then we topped it with like homemade mochi, toasted coconut flakes, diced golden kiwi. I think that was it. But yeah, we just like put this like, a little sorbet situation. I think people liked it.
That sounds delicious.
Yeah.
I'm sure I would love it. Yeah.
Wow. So speaking of food,
Yes.
a little birdie told me that one morning at Denning, you were seen to be combining boiled eggs and pickles from the snack fridge. That's a very interesting combination, if I do say so myself. So could you tell us some other weird food combinations that you like?
Oh no. Actually, I will say there was cheese in there too. Like the little
my
blocks of cheese I
gosh.
broke it up.
We didn't even have that. Anson added that.
Let me think. Okay, this is not really a weird food craving, but there's something I eat a lot. It's like the sour gummy straws. I would like literally eat like multiple bags of those, like the family, like the share size ones. What do I eat that I combine together though? Oh, okay. I'm also gonna clown for so hard. When I try to eat protein, I'll buy those like frozen chicken strips from Trader Joe's, and I'll literally take 2 out, put it in a bowl, microwave it, and put no salt, no nothing, and just eat it. And when I tell people about it, they're like genuinely disgusted by that. But I'm like, it doesn't taste that bad.
Hey, that's okay. That's okay. I support all the curiosity.
Yes.
Okay, so on the topic of food, this will be our last food question.
Yes.
So again, quote from Jackson. Anson really likes Cantonese food and is proud of his Cantonese culture. Do you have any recommendations for authentic Cantonese food in the Bay Area? You may have some spots, but I know he keeps some secrets so people don't start going there, LOL.
Tell me.
There's a place on El Camino called Hong Kong Restaurant.
Nice. Not sponsored.
Not sponsored, but like low-key, if you want to.
If you want to sponsor us.
Also, like we should have them cater for like a case event one day for sure.
That, yeah.
But like I love Cantonese food, and honestly, it's kind of sad because I feel like not that many people like Cantonese food because like Szechuan food I think is much more popular in America. But I think there's like a delicateness to a lot of Cantonese food that if more people tried, I think they'd like it. But yeah, Jackson and I frequent that place like fairly frequently.
Nice.
Pun intended. And it's like all like Cantonese people. So like sometimes if I'm feeling, I'll whip up my Cantonese a little bit.
Okay.
And like, I have to say, I feel like sometimes when there's a long line and I throw in some Cantonese, we get through the line a little bit faster. So there's some utility to the Cantonese that I use sometimes. But yeah, it's on El Camino for those of you who are there. I tend to go on Friday or Saturday night, so don't go then so you don't make the line long so I can get in faster.
That's fair. That's super fair.
One of the most important questions that we received. And I want you to answer this one very, very honestly from the bottom of your heart. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Is it true that Jackson Powell convinced you to apply to the podcast?
Oh my God.
That's quote. That is quote verbatim. Subtext to that was just want to get that on record was the follow-up.
That's crazy. Okay, I'll be honest. So I was interested in the podcast initially, and Sydney was hosting an info session as I think we're having one fairly soon for the incoming scholars who are interested. And there were a lot of people there. And I was like, I'm kind of interested, but you know how it is, like, especially in the beginning of med school, you're scared to sign up for too many commitments. I'm like, this is really fun. I've always wanted to do it. But it made me feel a little guilty because I wasn't doing anything else like med school related, right? I was like, maybe I need to focus on doing research. So when the form deadline was due to sort of like sign up, I didn't fill it out. And I told Jackson, I was like, I'll probably not do it.
Yeah.
And as he does, he's like, you better fill it out. And if I remember correctly, he later actually like, I think you and Jackson somehow knew each other at that point already. Yeah. And you guys had lunch. And he told me afterwards, he's like, I threw in like, that you're really interested in co-hosting the podcast. I was like, oh my God.
He did.
So
he did.
And now I need to fill it out. So I ended up filling it out and one thing led to another. And then I guess I'll give him credit. He drops it like every couple of weeks. He's like, you're welcome for the podcast. You're welcome for making me fill out the form for the podcast.
That's so funny.
So, okay, I'll give him a little bit of credit.
A little bit. 2%.
Yeah, he really cornered me here on the podcast to say this so everyone can know. But yes,
That's
that
funny.
is true.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Jackson, for all your rapid fire questions. They're much appreciated. And if you're curious what Jackson looks like, you should stay tuned for the reel that will come out soon. And also for context, Jackson's an MD PhD student here at Stanford. And so they met through med school. I don't know if that was said already. But okay, so our last two things, we're going to talk about one, some advice for any prospective applicants / something maybe you wish you would have known either before you started Knight-Hennessy or before applying. And then the other thing is if you want to share any improbable facts, you can choose which order to answer. Either one. For context, when you apply to Knight-Hennessy, part of your written application, we ask you to list 8 improbable facts. And these are things that are true about you, but people may not necessarily know just by looking at you. And so, Anson, our last 2 things with this episode, which one do you want to start with?
Let's start with improbable facts, and then we can end on a semi-inspiring note with the advice.
Full circle.
I think one of the improbable facts that I like to share is about acapella. For those who, honestly, I talk about the same like 5 things over and over again. So like you've probably heard it if you know me. Like I talk about working at Chipotle. I talk about anyway. So I did acapella in undergrad. I was in a group called Music Dynasty.
Cool.
Shout out to them. Oh, I just have to say this. Like the Music Dynasty to Stanford pipeline is crazy because there's 4 of us here right now. Yeah, it's pretty funny. And we like hung out recently. But my fun fact is that like when I was growing up, like I think in middle school when the film Pitch Perfect came out, I was like secretly obsessed with that film. I watched it so many times. And I never did singing before, besides like a mandatory like choral semester in like elementary school. But it was like something I always wanted to do. During COVID, I got like, it was just really lonely. And on the spur of the moment, I signed up and auditioned and joined the group. And it was like honestly one of the best experiences of undergrad. And the fun fact is that if you know Pitch Perfect, they compete in a competition called ICCA. And I think it was a really full circle moment because during my junior year, we actually competed in that exact same competition. We made it to quarterfinals. I sang a solo for it.
Wow.
And
okay.
It was just like crazy to see like how it went from 10 years ago when I'd never sang watching the movie to actually competing in the competition.
That's amazing.
So talented.
Awesome. Do you want to share one last improbable fact or just go straight to advice? Up to you, because Kathy has to go in 5 minutes.
Let's jump into some advice. Some advice. I think this is not going to be super original, but I believe it with like every ounce of my heart. And this ties into what I said before. But if you want to do something and in your head it makes sense to you, even if everybody tells you to do something different, not out of malice or anything, but just like pragmatism, you don't have to be pragmatic. You don't have to do the realistic thing. I never imagined that I would be here, like being able to pursue these things. To be very candid, my freshman year was like extremely tough. I told you I was bad at math. I was bad at math in freshman year. But like I started to figure things out, right? Like I started to realize what worked for me. And there was like a period where I was like, oh God, I maybe can't even get into medical school because like school is so tough. But if you truly believe it makes sense in your head and it's something you think you're going to regret not having tried, it's never the wrong path to take. And I think that applies to your career, graduate school. And I think for the context of KH, nobody applies thinking that they're going to get in.
Definitely not.
Nobody applies thinking they're going to get in, but it's very cliche. If you don't try, it's going to be 0%. And in the context of everything, it's not really that much effort to do the application, given like the potential benefits. Like just be like beyond the scholarship and not having to pay for med school, which is really nice. But like the incredible people I met, like the community, being in Denning House has been like a transformative part of my experience. And if I hadn't done it, I would be like hitting myself in the head. So TLDR, just like do it. If you believe that it's something you want to do, even if you don't like really believe in yourself, just do it. Because in the process, you'll learn. And even if it doesn't happen this time, it'll really set you up in putting good habits for future to keep pursuing, you know, that next peak. And I think that's how you stay like really active in life and just continue pursuing goals throughout the entire duration of your career and even beyond that.
Wow, I am inspired. And just wanted to say, like, it really has been full circle. And like me kind of like sitting here right in front of Anson, like interviewing him, I am like beaming with pride. Like, you know, at this like freshman I met for the first time like 6 to 7 years ago. And now like seeing your growth all this time. And now just like how passionate and eloquent you are about your story and all your like multi-varied interests. I think it's something very, very special. And I'm so like happy to be like sitting here and interviewing you. Like I have already learned so much about you too. And I can't wait to see like how much you grow next. But I'm so proud of you.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much to both Kathy and Anson for the bright and early episode, sharing your wisdom. Anson, I think a lot of people are really going to enjoy this episode and find a lot of joy and inspiration. So thank you all to the listeners for making it to the end. We appreciate you. And if you want to hear more of Anson, lucky for you, he's a co-host of the podcast. And so he'll be back exactly in the future. So thank you so much again, everyone. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Imagine the World, where we hear from inspiring members of the KHS community who are making significant contributions in their respective fields, challenging the status quo and pushing the boundaries of what is possible as they imagine the world they want to see.
This podcast is sponsored by Knight-Hennessy Scholars at Stanford University, a multidisciplinary, multicultural graduate fellowship program providing scholars with financial support to pursue graduate studies at Stanford while helping equip them to be visionary, courageous, and collaborative leaders who address complex challenges facing the world. Follow us on social media at Knight-Hennessy and visit our website at kh.stanford.edu to learn more about the program and our community.